Hello, welcome. Um, it's very weird to be here talking about myself. So we were talking with the other speakers that you cannot show your projects. I'm more scared I'm too personal and not enough projects, but just tell me, but not in the notes, not in the. I'm born in Amsterdam. This is my crib that's being towed up the day I was supposed to be born. Both of my parents come from Amsterdam. These are my parents. They're both quite creative people. My mom did the Rietveld Academy, so she's a graphic designer and a photographer. And my dad is super handy and can make everything. And in the 80s in Amsterdam, it was a bit different than it is now. This is a warehouse at the kennels, and it was vacant. So they decided to buy it with a group of friends, this house. And we were living in the attic, and on the ground floor, my mom had her photo studio, and my dad had his workshop. But it was still filled with refrigerators, and it was nothing, just a dark attic, but we started living in there. I was born, and slowly they built out the whole house. It was quite big, and I remember there were always rooms being built later on. And our house was the highest from the houses around us, so we had this really nice view over the center of Amsterdam. And this particular view is my view from my room, the view I had sitting behind my desk. And making this lecture gave me some insights. So I learned something. I always think I just do intuitive, I do stuff without thinking, but it's a story actually. So thank you for making me do this. So I think that maybe here, this is where my urban architecture fascination might have been started. This is my dad in his workshop. He was a model maker, but not really like architectural model maker, although this looks like an architectural model. He was making models for commercials because in those days there were no computers, so everything had to be built and photographed. And he was making it. So for instance, this is a car commercial where they needed a dragon with, I don't know, a scary situation. And then my dad would make the dragon. So this is me on top of the dragon. There were always weird and funny stuff happening in our house. Am I standing in your view?
Yeah, no worries to see you.
Yeah, okay. Hey. And this is me and my brother in the workshop of my dad. We were always allowed from a very young age to use all his tools and machines. So we were there just building stuff. I think I'm making a chair or making houses for our hamsters or, I don't know, stuff. And we still do. So on the left, you see my father and my brother building my graduation model. And then on the right, I wanted to make for my daughter a little cabinet on her desk. And then my brother said, yeah, let's do it. And then we hang out and make stuff. Mike. So my parents also had very creative friends, of course. One of them is Mike Schuit. He's an artist. He worked with several artists. He actually worked with Edward James in Exilicia, Mexico. And at some point, he started to buy houses, old houses, and he would just renovate them, like with his own fantasy, and make the most beautiful, crazy houses of it. And that's me in his arms, and my dad. And every time we would go there, every time he had a new house, and my dad would help, and his daughter would be there, and we would spend our summers there. So we kept going to all those new houses and see all these weird things. And now me and my family still go there every summer, and he sits in our apartment in Amsterdam for a few weeks. Both a bit inspired by Mike, but also because my parents were both sort of artists. They work for themselves, and it's not that we didn't have money, but we didn't have like tons of it. So I figured it would be good to have like a stable job and to do something decent. So I figured architecture, you can always apply somewhere and work and make a living. So I first went to the technical school to be an engineer. I graduated with two of my best friends, Anne and Dirk-Jan. And after that, I did my master's in the Academy of Architecture in Amsterdam. So I didn't ever leave Amsterdam, actually. My mom proposed for me to go to art school. I was like, no, I need to do something decent. And then in the end, I sort of ended up in a sort of art school anyhow, which is the Academy. And so I feel like things went really went how they went, and it could have gone different easily. But in the end, I'm really glad that I chose this path, because I was much more fit to this kind of education than the university, where you have to first analyze stuff and then make urban designs, then volumes and then floor plans. And I couldn't do that. I can just dive in and then make something. So I was really happy in this place where I could, instead of making an actual plan with facades and sections and details, I could hand in this as my final presentation, and I could tell this whole story about the escapism of Helsinki, and I was allowed to do that. Also for my graduation, I was allowed to do whatever I wanted to do, and I didn't really know what I wanted to do because I was still researching what I wanted to do or what I find so interesting. This is the Academy of Architecture, and this is the Amsterdam City Hall. And every day when I would go there, I would come from the street and then go around this huge building with all this weird nothing space around it. And sort of in a random moment, I decided, okay, I will make a new design for the City Hall. And the thing is, I had a lot of things that I didn't like about it. It was such a big building in the center of this really fine meshed city. And it didn't really do anything with the city. And all the excess space around it, they didn't feel like they were being used very much. So I really dove into in urban architecture, or by how a city can withhold spaces. So of course, Nolly, where you can see all the public interiors as a part of the urban tissue. So I wanted to make a building that's sort of a building, but also a city, but not with streets, but with interior rooms that are outside. So, but by doing this, I discovered, oh yeah, this is what I find interesting, this sort of in-between space between architecture and urbanism. So in the end, I made this sort of huge building, but actually it's also part of a city. So it's not even a building, it's just like some piece of tissue of the city. But instead of making actual streets running through the building, it had to be more a different kind of public spaces attached to each other. So you would know you would enter a building, but still you would know it's public space and street. During my, how am I time-wise? Great, right? During my master's studies, it's an evening study, the academy, so I was working during the day. I worked at Rob Hootsmans, which I find is a brilliant architect. And after my studies, I've worked for Nanne, who I've met. I did the Helsinki project that I showed. It was one of his studios. And also from him, I learned a lot. And I still do. We work together on several projects. And since he's now also a developer, he's also my client. But still, I was glad I could find a job like I wanted to, because that's why I studied this instead of being an artist. But then there was something that I felt like I want to do something else. I mean, if you're an architect, you also dream of doing your own thing. But it's quite difficult to just quit your job and hope that things will start. But luckily, once every 4 years, there's this Prix de Rome competition, and when you graduated, you're allowed to enter. So there's just 1 or 2, and you also cannot be too old. So there's a window where you just have to jump in and be lucky enough to be in this precise, good place to enter. So I entered, and I was chosen to enter the competition, and I quit my job, and I just went, I thought, this is my opportunity to start something for myself. So, coming from Amsterdam, looking at Rotterdam, which was the assignment to do something with the city center, to make it more alive again, make a link to the history, I was seeing all these objects in space, so totally different than Amsterdam, and the objects were not really attached to the space around it or doing anything, it were just objects in space. So for me, it felt like it was really like Dogville. They put a thing there, and it's a nice thing, it's a reliquary, it's something important, but it's not really attached to anything else. Next to that, my dad is a model maker. He's not an hoarder, as he says himself, he's a collector. So on the right, you see one of his cupboards with his treasures. And when you have treasures, like they have in Rotterdam, it would be good to exhibit them, to show them. So, but also not only the objects, the buildings, but also the spaces. If there's an important space, you can define the space by putting a wall around. So now you have an exceptional space within, and then you have the rest of the space. So you differentiate the space. And then all those spaces can be attached to each other, and then you will make a framework. So I decided I will make a cabinet of curiosities for all these objects. So they all have their own space, they can appropriate, and then together they can be more of a city structure. The objects can merge into the city. So, and then I won. So, yeah, that was a nice turning point in my life, so I could continue doing my own thing. But the best thing about this prize was that I was able to go to Rome for a few months. It's an old prize where you would get a study trip to study Rome, and they just reinstalled the trip. So I was the first to go. They didn't have a spot at the Dutch Academy. Every country has an academy in Rome, and the Dutch one is more with a library to study. So they rented me a space in the American Academy, which was awesome. It was this building, this garden, the garden around it, the apartments for the families, because there were also families living there. This was their front yard. I would actually say to people, yeah, we live in this tiny Vatican city, and there's actually guards living in the bush, and it was so weird. Fountains in the front and in the back. And they would give me this studio, a huge studio to make stuff. You could just make stuff because they would cook for you for lunch, for dinner, and then there would be all these other fellows from all different disciplines, all Americans, of course, historians, writers, mathematics, all kind of people, and you would meet and you would talk, and they would all have a link to Rome. And there would be a lot of events and walks and talks, so everybody would give a lecture about their special item or make a excursion that you could join. So it was a super inspiring moment. And then Academy was on the top of the Gianicolo, and I had a new view on a new city. And it was my favorite city, I just discovered. I was going to this Nolly plan. So I never took public transport or a cab. We did everything by foot, and we really got to know the city. And here above, you see the American Academy on the top of the mountain, and then just by an everyday walk, you would just walk by this fountain, which is the opening scene of the Grande Bellezza, the Tempietto von Bramante, which is just around the corner there. You know all the stuff. This Sapienza from Borromini, the Pantheon, of course. But I also discovered new stuff, or not new, but for me, I didn't know them before. I just run into them. So this Piazza San Ignazio von Raguzzini was really, something that really inspired me. It's about these buildings that are really deployed to make a very special urban space as an entrance to the church that's behind it. So there were buildings made to hold this space, and the nice thing is that they're not just holding the space, but they're also very important or taking their place in city as well. So for me, this was really an eye-opener how you can make like a square with actual buildings that are also there, and also to integrate it within the city structure and make it one whole. And the best thing, well, the second best thing, no, the best, I wasn't wrong, I could bring my partner. So we were together, living the best time of our life, doing whatever we want to do. Because he just started freelancing, so he could just work from there. So we had such a good time that we came back with the kids. Which was sort of an accident, but I was also good that it happened, because otherwise planning these things and also starting your career can be difficult, and now we just had to do it. Another funny thing, I'm going super good in time, yeah. Another funny thing is that I can see my kids, just like me and my brother, are always like cutting and pasting and asking for more glue and tape. It's really in our genes to just make stuff together. And I was looking a bit into my family history, and I was looking at my two grandfathers, so from my mom's side and from my dad's side. And I found some similarities. So this is my mother's father. He was a writer, or he was a bookmaker. So he would find an interesting subject and he would just dive into it and he would make a book of it. So he would take something and would make something new of it. His obituary said champion book paster, so he was just a sampler. Then my other grandfather, this was my surprise for you, the German. No, my other grandfather was a very successful Dutch singer who sung German. And what he did, he translated all the famous songs, Bonanza and ik weet wel, the Legend of Babylon, everything he knew. He translated it in German. He had a huge success with it. So he took stuff he knew, he made it his own, and it became something else. So in a way, that's actually, I thought, well, that's exactly what I do. So I look around, I find all these things that I find super fascinating, and I make it into something new. So for instance, this was for I could make a tiny tower, and it could be a solid block. And I just sort of intuitive start to collect images, and then there's one image that really intrigued me a lot. And I turned it into something new, a new building. Since 2017, I'm working together with Art de Vries, who shares my fascination for the in-between space, the space you make with architecture and urbanism. But I tend to be, I hear, a difficult person to work with, because I just dive into it and don't really communicate the whole time what I'm doing. And Art has his own way to design and to come up with ideas. Oh, wait, I'm forgetting something. Wait. He shares my fascination. We do different assignments, buildings, public spaces, exhibitions, installations, but they all are about this in-between space. So this was our common fascination. But the way we work is very intuitive, and we have our own way, and we sort of talk to each other with images. So for instance, this was, we're allowed to make a proposal for a zoo, for a monkey house, and we both were in love with something next to the location, this old rock where other monkeys lived on. And then we start by, we're obsessed by the shape, so we start looking for things that has that kind of shape, and then we both think it should be heavy, it should be monumental, so we're looking for images to make it more heavy. And then we think, oh, but that the bottom should be light, because the monkeys should climb on it. And then we run into this image of an old cabinet that's in the zoo itself, and then we think, well, that's it. And then very logical, we're able to together make this as a building. Another example is our just delivered building in Groningen for dance and theater companies. They have their practice rooms in there. We wanted to make it like a collection of buildings instead of one building with 4 users in it, but they need to do something with each other, but also have their own entities. So sort of this forum romanum kind of thing. And then we thought, oh, well, we don't just want to make a building, we want to make something with a very good and nice public space in the middle. And then we wanted to make it linked to the surroundings and show them what we're doing in here, make it more public and open. But it's a really closed function, so there's a lot of wall and mass, and how can we make it smaller and lighter and not that massive? So we collect all these images, and then suddenly, it comes all together in a building with all these references, but not the content-wise, but just the image, the shape, the shape. And now just one last thing, because I feel like everything is really intuitive and things just happen. And I don't know, I'm not planning ahead, but sometimes things just work out in the way it should be. This is so a book of one of my grandfathers about the Dutch zoo artist, which was my favorite when I was a child because it's for children. So I'm born in Amsterdam, so I've been in Amsterdam a lot, in artists a lot in my youth. But now I am again because our daughter has art classes in there, so it's sort of holy ground for us. And now we were actually commissioned to design the new planetarium in Artis. So I feel like the whole circle is closing and. That's it, actually. I don't have a good ending, sorry.
It was beautiful, and it was also surprising. I hope you also enjoyed preparing the talk. You talk about, just the last thing that came to my mind was that you talk about your father, your grandfathers. Do you have also inspiration that came from your mother on the female side?
What a nice question.
So, maybe not, no, I'm sure.
Yeah, I think that my mom and my dad are a nice balance because once they separated, so before we would have a house with some treasures, and then when they separated, we would have a really slick, clean half on one side, and then I would have this collector's home at the other side. So I think I think they're both in me, the cleanness and the collector.
That's interesting. You say that, talking about your collaboration with art, is that both of you are very different, and you complement each other. That's why so well. Some kind of
we're not. We're different, but we're also the same.
My question would be, how does he make you a better architect?
Yeah.
If maybe not.
How do you? No, I think together we're better, and it's not that we are doing things extremely different than each other. I mean, we like the same stuff, but we don't make the same stuff. So together it becomes better, and we challenge each other. And I don't know, it just works. It's also sort of an accident, but it works really well. So it wasn't planned. I mean, we were just Art asked me to join with the competition because he saw my graduation project. And then we won the competition, and then that went well. And then we won another competition, and then I don't know. We just We work well together.
That's good.
Yeah.
It should continue working well together. From an interview that I found on the internet about you say that if everything has to yield a financial return.
Yeah. Where did you read that?
I don't know.
I can't remember saying this.
There is no room for inventors. Talking about that, I don't know, if you don't feel like it's a natural quote, we talk about something else.
Let's do that, yeah.
All right.
It's a little bit out of context.
Could be, yeah. Definitely. What do you consider one of your biggest challenges that you have to overcome in your professional life? Because you talk very naturally about, well, it's difficult to establish your own by yourself. Yes. You say you have to quit your job and so on. Yeah. And it takes a lot of effort. And you do your dream in Rome, and everything is amazing.
There was trouble as well, but I decided not to.
And then and then you have. Yeah. And that's also something like, okay, now it's also more challenging as well.
I could also make a dark story of it, but I decided to only
of
tell
Rome?
No,
Yes.
of my life. But I decided to
You share whatever you want.
yeah, I wanted to make it. No, I mean it sounds really easy, and then this happened. But of course, I mean after the Prix de Rome, I felt like I almost died because I was living on cigarettes and coffee because it was so important for me to make something because I thought this is my shot, and so yeah, I've struggled and worked really hard and being very insecure as well.
Have you felt that way afterwards? When you came back from Rome, if you have felt that way, like putting a lot of pressure on you, on your work?
Well, I thought like it gave me. I gave me. Hoe zeg je dat? Een schop onder je kont. It gave myself like now you have to do it because now is the time. You're not gonna win another Prix de Rome. This is it. So that was very helpful for me.
And I mean, if you have also put some pressure, or that kind of pressure afterwards with your own practice.
What do you mean?
You had to deliver. That's why you were living on coffee and.
Yes. No, it was just
on.
because I was nervous and I thought it was so important. Yeah.
Okay. And what are there takeaways from an experience like Rome? Are there learnings that you took? What you can think of?
Well, so I showed a lot of architecture that I really, it was also for me. So it was a very inspiring thing. I always, there's a lot of things I've seen that I realized later on that I use them. But also, it's really good that if you worked so hard and lived on coffee and cigarettes, then you're taking out of the situation and just be in Rome for 3 months. I mean, that was like the best thing ever. Also mentally, to be away and not have to do anything on that moment and just recharge and be inspired.
They cooked for you, all right?
Yes.
All the gatherings, all the events.
Yeah, it was amazing. It was like a honeymoon, 3 months.
One last question would be, if you have a very personal way of approaching architecture. I wonder if there are any practices or approaches in the industry that you consider an absolute no-go.
On television, you want me to say this? No. I don't know. We're just like it's just that our thing is really to make really contextual architecture. We're really focusing on the space we make with buildings instead of the building. So we're sort of a reaction to the super Dutch architecture, I guess. But I'm not really actively wanting to do that. It's just what happens because we find other things interesting.
And is there something that you will see on other projects that you will consider that's very bad mistake?
What do you want me to say?
Say that's no.
No, yeah, I don't know. It's like everybody does everything on a different way, and I mean, even like the officers that I really look up to, they also do things in a different way that you will do, and sometimes it's better or sometimes it isn't.
Like which offices you look at? I mean, that's not that private. Come on.
So we are in. So there are a lot of officers that we really look up to that we see a lot now in competitions. You want me to tell you?
No. If I want you to feel comfortable.
Okay.
If you don't need to tell, you don't want to tell. But I was asking if you look at other officers' work and you kind of
sure, and we learn stuff from it.
Yeah,
and I admire stuff of it.
But we won't say the names. No problem. Donna, it was a very beautiful presentation. I don't forget the detail of the first slide. I don't know if you mentioned it properly, that it was actually your
crib.
And it was a beautiful picture at
nice.
The very beginning.
My dad made a crib.
It looked amazing, and it was a very beautiful presentation. Thank you.